This is a very simple point that we're looking at here. It's the simplest point in the whole wide world. Nothing could be simpler, and yet we really don't seem to be able to get it. We're extremely far from getting it. And there's a reason for that. The reason being that we actually need to believe in this illusion in order to continue with the type of life that we are habituated to. If we were actually to see through the illusion, then we'd have to do something different. That would be the end of all of that. And that in itself is motivation enough. Because as Krishnamurti says, fear isn't to do with the unknown, because we don't know the unknown. Fear is to do with the coming to the end of the known. And it doesn't matter how crappy the known is, how boring, how tedious, how spurious it is. We don't want it to come to an end, because that's like jumping off a cliff. That's taking a big ontological risk. So that's the reason why we don't get this very simple point that I started off talking about. The very simple point being that, well, just to come back to the image of King Canute sitting on his throne with the waves lapping around his ankles, his royal ankles. So just hold that image for a second. And what that image is, that's King Canute trying to show that the tides can't be commanded by a king. Even though we think kings are very, very lofty. As lofty as you can get. You can't get better than the king. But that doesn't mean that being a king actually means anything, because it doesn't mean a damn thing. It's just a game we're playing. So we can't command the natural world, and we can't command the psyche either. We can't command who we are. And so the point is that we can't change the way that we are. We just can't do it. We're powerless to do that. Absolutely powerless. So if we understood that very, very, very clearly, we wouldn't set off on the journey that we have set off. We wouldn't set off on the journey of amassing loads of apparent ways to fix ourselves, improve ourselves, cure ourselves, heal ourselves, etc., etc. Because we'd know, well, all of that is no good at all. We can't even get that far. Because it's impossible, so we can't get any far. No far at all, so don't even bother going down that road, because it isn't a real road. And yet we headed off down that road a long time ago, and we're quite far advanced on it at this stage. We're certainly not turning back. No way are we turning back. That's a fact. You can talk to anyone you like. There's no inkling anywhere of us wanting to turn back, or even thinking about turning back. We're rushing forward. We're rushing on. We never stop. Like Krishnamurti says, we're like monkeys. We never see, because we never stop. We just keep on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And if we stopped, we might see, but we never do stop. So that's what Krishnamurti said. This is a very contentious point, or potentially a contentious point, depending on who you're talking to. If you're talking to a Zen master, it wouldn't be particularly contentious, I don't suppose. But it's very, very easy to demonstrate. So easy to demonstrate. Anyone at any time can demonstrate the point to themselves if they wish to. So just to imagine, how would you go around demonstrating that point? to yourself. Just imagine that you're walking into a room. You're sitting on a chair. There's nothing in the room but one chair. You're sitting in the chair. You're in a particular mind state. You've got to be in some kind of mind state. You're in a particular mood. You're in a particular mind state. So you sit in the chair. And then normally what we do, we distract ourselves with loads and loads and loads of things. So we just imagine that this is a bare room with nothing but the chair in it. We can't distract ourselves. There's no TV or iPads or phones or anything like that. We can't distract ourselves. Well, that for a start is a weird situation. Like, how often would you be in a situation like that? But we'll imagine it. So let us say that here I am sitting in that chair in the bare room. I'm in a particular mind state. I have a particular inner state. And no matter what that is, I can sit in that chair till the cows come home. I'm never going to be able to change that mind state. How the hell am I going to do that? If I'm feeling angry, can I talk myself out of being angry? If I'm feeling sad, if I'm feeling guilty, if I'm feeling shame, whatever it is, if I'm bored, all I can do is distract myself from that mind state. And we kind of imagine that that's the same thing as changing it, but it isn't. Obviously, it isn't. So suppose I'm in a state where I feel kind of that life is meaningless and I feel somewhat alienated from anything that actually is real and anything that actually matters. Suppose I'm in that kind of a mind state. It's kind of like boredom. It just goes a bit further, really. I'm bored of myself and my life because actually there's nothing in it. Let's just say that. So I'm sitting there in the chair. What the hell am I going to do to change that? What on earth can I do to change that? CBT, rational emotive therapy, it doesn't. I can just imagine I'm sitting there and I'm going through these motions in my head. Do this step, do that step, do that step, do that step. Am I going to be in a different mind state at the end of it? No, of course I'm not. Obviously I'm not. But what I can do is distract myself, and that's what we do fluently, with great expertise and great skill. So then, it seems as if we've changed our mind state. But that's not the same as changing it. And the reason it's not the same is because it rebounds on us. So what we gain, we pay back. Taking a loan, we pay the loan back, we pay it back with interest. And this is something we can also very, very easily observe. That's not to do with, oh, I mustn't distract myself, because then what am I going to do? Even my attempt to not distract myself is a distraction. What it is about noticing this distraction business. What happens when I distract myself? Very, very easy to say. What happens first is there is the relief or the pleasure of successful distraction. It has to be successful distraction. And it's like, whoa, this is really nice. It's like, there's the euphoria. There's the high. And then it's like a swing that goes out as far as it can. It slows down, stops, teeters on that point and comes straight back again. It has to come straight back again. It's got nowhere else to go because it's not a real thing. So we know when we watch ourselves distracting ourselves that after the euphoria phase, things die down. There's not so much euphoria. And then comes the swing phase, the dysphoria phase. And not only is it the case that the pain which we have been assuming that it is pain because we wouldn't distract ourselves otherwise, successfully distracting ourselves comes back, which obviously feels bad. We weren't expecting it. On some level, we'd told ourselves, yes, that's seen off that bad feeling. Good riddance to it. So to have it come back again is a shock to the system, and we discover that we were lying to ourselves, basically, that we were allowing ourselves to sink into a state of false comfort, false security. Everything's going to be okay. Because we stuck our heads in the sand, it doesn't mean everything's going to be okay, of course. It just means that moment when we suddenly realize that everything isn't going to be okay, and that we only thought that because we were being stupid and sticking our heads in the sand, is going to be very, very horrific and painful for us. So the sense of security we obtain is perfectly balanced by that shock and anguish and panic that comes later on. So in other words, it's really not worth it, because you gain nothing as a result of it. If there's one thing that we human beings could learn, being ace distractors, is that distractions aren't worth it. It's a journey to nowhere. It's walking in a big circle. We think we're getting away, and whoa, we're coming back again, back to the same old spot. And then it's like, uh-oh, is this Groundhog Day or what? Because then what can we do? There's nothing we can do. We can't change the state that we're in, the mind state that we're in. So we just start the distraction again. And we do it again. It's a vibration, an ongoing vibration. Euphoric distraction followed by dysphoric failed distraction, or dysphoric distraction that we can now see through. And that's a kind of very nuanced form of suffering, because we can see ourselves doing what we always do to get away from the suffering. And the fact that we can see that we're doing it is not a nice thing. Normally we don't see it because we become unconscious. We get absorbed in the distraction. We get immersed. But it's not working, so I'm not getting immersed. I'm not getting distracted. So I can see myself trying to distract myself, going through the motions that I always go through without even knowing that this is what I do all the time. And I can see myself doing that, and it's kind of freaky and not nice. And at the same time as seeing myself going through this futile maneuver, the bad feeling comes back and it whacks into me. It's got energy in it because I push it away, push energy into it. It comes back with that energy, whacks into me harder. I'm paying back the suffering with interest. Plus, there is the awareness of what I'm doing, which is kind of grotesque or something in a way. It's a hard awareness to see myself relying on this sterile procedure to try and make myself feel better, and then not working. I realize just what my situation is, and that's not an easy awareness to sit with. Awareness is never easy to sit with. It's lack of awareness that's easy to sit with. Now we could see this every time we distract ourselves if we wanted to, and if we did that, we'd pretty soon become disillusioned with the whole thing, and we'd stop being distraction artists. We'd figure out something else instead. But we don't see it because we're skilled at stacking the distractions up, or making a whole world of distractions. We've created a whole world of distractions. So when one starts to lose its potency, we move on to the next and the next. It's like being a drug user who's got so many drugs they can use. So once you start getting tolerance for one, okay, I'm going to take something else totally different instead, and you can keep on going a lot longer that way. So we're like that, and the world, as we have designed it for ourselves, is designed to facilitate that multiple non-stop escaping. We talk about being busy and how it's good to be busy. What we fail to mention is that for the most part we're busy distracting ourselves, from the reality of our situation. So we're busy for sure, but it's no good. Why would we expect a medal for that? And yet we kind of do, because we look as far as the business and we say, the business is great. The business is great. Look how busy he is. Jesus, he's awful busy. Or aren't you busy? You're great. I mean, we don't give a damn what the business is about. And what the business is about is running away from ourselves, distracting ourselves from the actual reality of our situation. Playing games, as we could also say. Now, this isn't to say that this technique of advanced super distraction works in the end run, because it suffers the same limitation. It just means that we're getting more of we've got more of a span in which to be distracted. We can postpone the moments when we start getting disillusioned a bit longer, or a lot longer, maybe a hell of a lot longer. But when it comes, it's just all the more intense. And so then what we do is we start babbling on about mental health conditions and the need to take antidepressants and whatever the hell. Like the brain has suddenly started malfunctioning. Oh, you naughty brain, what are you doing that for? You stupid brain, why don't you let me carry on living in distraction mode? What's wrong with you, brain? You stupid or what? Now, it's possible that we could extend the whole period of distraction even longer that way. Well, we can, definitely. If you're on Effexor or something like that, you could feel a lot better. You could get 5 or 6 years or even longer. I don't know how long. But it's the same thing. It's just another level. Our game's getting more and more sophisticated. We're getting cleverer and cleverer. And the cleverer we are, the worse it is for us. We've got so incredibly clever now that it's actually very bad for us. We can't even imagine what we're actually doing with our distraction. We're creating pain for the future. We're inventing new and hitherto unglimpsed forms of suffering. And that's exactly what we're doing. But then we don't learn from the suffering. We categorize it as being due to some extraneous cause, and then try to fix it with even more an extra helping of cleverness, please, or 2 or 3 helpings of cleverness. And so that's our situation. And so what's the alternative, we might say? Okay, that sounds pretty miserable. It sounds pretty damn horrific. It seems like a nightmare that we can't really spot to be a nightmare until later on. Maybe we will start to spot that it's a nightmare, but we'll be pretty far gone in it at that stage, and we probably won't be thinking of turning back or anything like that. So the alternative is, well, supposing I do sit there and I'm in some kind of state of mind, and supposing I'm going around in circles for a while as we do, and suppose that it dawns on me that I'm just evading. I'm going around in circles evading something that can't be evaded. Suppose that dawns on me, because it will, because that's how our natural intelligence works. If we just sit there without any distraction, that will dawn. So when that awareness dawns, it takes the oomph out of our attempt to be distracting ourselves. We stop believing in it. We see it for what it is, and it falls away from us, just like, as they say, it's like a snake's skin will fall away from it when it's time for the snake to shed. There's no need to go about for the snake to go around pulling its skin off, or it can obviously go around the place and itch itself off branches and trees and things, but the skin comes off when it's ready to come off. There's no need for any purposeful or deliberate action on the part of the snake to cause that. And it's the same with us. When we allow ourselves space in which for our natural insight to kick in, we see that the distraction's no good, and it falls away from us. Exactly the same with an addiction. This isn't to say it's easy, because who knows what's going to happen to us in the course of our addiction. We could die, we could go through all sorts of stuff, but there is the possibility of, through long experience and conscious experience, actually being aware of what's going on to us, that we can outgrow the addiction, that it no longer appeals to us, that we see it for what it is, i.e. an exercise in endlessly prolonged suffering. If we get to the point of really seeing that, obviously there's little enough incentive to kind of jump on board again, even though we will from force of habit, but eventually it'll peter out as a result of awareness. So what we're adding to this situation isn't methods or the thinking mind's cleverness, because the thinking mind can only ever hide, it can only ever distract. But what we're looking at is the natural insight. So we add consciousness to the situation, and that's it. It's not like you have to do something then, add consciousness and then stir. No, you don't have to stir. only we can't add consciousness because it's not a deliberate act, because I can't deliberately be conscious. But by not distracting myself as much, or by staying with myself when I'm distracting myself and noticing myself distracting myself, then I get to perceive what's really going on. I get to be aware of what's really going on, and that awareness then happens purely as a result of the fact that I'm not trying to avoid difficulty so much. So it's all to do with the difficulty, the pain, the emotional pain, and the insight can't be separated. In other words, the cure for the pain is in the pain, as Rumi says. So we just notice ourselves going through this, whatever it is we're going through, and doing whatever it is we're doing. And insight will surely come. And it comes through doing nothing in particular, apart from just noticing. It's not a fancy thing that we have to do. So supposing I'm angry, and I'm sitting there, and I'm with my anger, and I realize I can't get away from it, I can't avoid it. So I stop trying to avoid it, and not avoiding the anger means feeling it properly, feeling it as it actually is. And that process of feeling the pain, the emotional pain as it really is, or feeling the anger as it really is, that process is the same process of no longer trying to evade. It's the same thing. So when my heart goes out to the evasions and the distractions, I feel that I am feeling, I experience on a deep level what it is that I was trying to avoid. I don't have to make myself experience it or feel it. I don't have to force myself to feel it, because that's not possible. That's just the mind being clever. I know I'll force myself to feel the feeling, and then the feeling will go away. It just happens all by itself when we stop pushing it away too much, or when we carry on pushing it away but allow ourselves to be aware of our pushing of it away. So what this really comes down to is no longer relying on the mind to give us an escape route. It's like that fella, he's been promising escape routes for an awful long time. He's never delivered anything, and we look at him and think, feck him. Bollocks, feck him. We no longer believe in him. And so what that comes down to is not investing in that prescribed course of action, not going through with it, not believing in it, and letting go of it, because there's no good in it. So all of the stuff that I've been saying, it all comes down to letting go, which I didn't want to say too much because it's a word that's used all the time and in a very meaningless way. But this is what letting go really is. It's disappointment, it's disillusionment. It's seeing that there's nothing in it when we thought there was lots and lots of stuff in it. We see that there's nothing in it. So when we see there's nothing in our distractions, in all of that, there's nothing good in it, there's suffering in it, I suppose, then we let go of it. We give up. Feck it, I give up on a very deep level. And paradoxically, then our mind state does change. It does change, but not because we wanted it to.